We're going to move on. 11th, we didn't finish thirds. We have fourths, and then we have something else. What do we have? Actually, we have chords in seconds. So we'll see how far we get. I've decided that I don't have a gun against my head. Actually, I do. Michael has a gun against my head. I didn't want to mention that. But no, there's no gun, meaning that we have to get, I talked about it last time, we must reach a certain point. I want to take our time and go over this material, and wherever we reach at the end is where we were meant to reach. That sounds very philosophical, doesn't it? A Zen-like attitude. Okay, we heard this, right?
Yeah.
We didn't hear this, did we? No. I think this is...
We heard this.
We heard this too? I don't think we did.
No,
No, we didn't hear. I think we stopped with time remembered.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Scriabin, Piano Sonata number 5. We're still looking at 7th and 9th chords. Now to us nowadays, 7th chords and 9th chords are very standard practice. That's why I showed the Bill Evans. Jazz pieces all the time, and 7th is nothing to use, much less 9th chords. But this music from the 10s and the 20s, extensive use of that was new, and that's part of the reason why we're looking at it. So we look at this example. Scriabin, we've looked at Scriabin before. He's really one of the innovators that around the turn of the century that broke open the old-fashioned common practice tonality and brought real chromaticism and real new approaches to harmony. He and Debussy and Richard Strauss were very, very influential around the turn of the century. So we see these are all 7th chords and 9th chords, and what I'm pointing out here is his different motifs, his different ideas. We started talking about that a little bit last week. So you see two ideas here. Like he writes consort, for the keyboard. So we see this idea, which is this melodic figure descending down by more than an octave. And again, 16th notes. So we have A, Z. Remember the first motif in the piece, you start at the end of the alphabet with the Z. So this is Z. And then he contrasts this with these 7th chords, 9th chords. This is G. We can see G7 right here. Some of them jump up to here is G7. There goes to the 9th right there. You see the 9th comes in on A or A sharp. No, actually he has A sharp. So he does this, and you see the A sharp comes back in here. So this idea, he keeps contrasting these two through this. Let's just listen to this. We have this open here. That's the next one.
It's the one before time remembered. Okay.
No, it should be. As loud as we can. We hear he's moving up chromatically in here. He goes by tritones too. Notice this: A flat to D, B flat to E, tritone movement. Oh, Schoenberg. Look at this. This is it's chromatic, very chromatic. But interestingly enough, he begins with a B flat chord and he ends with a B flat major chord. It's not a coincidence, but it's not. When we speak about music being atonal, that means it doesn't have a center. It doesn't have a harmonic center. It doesn't mean that there's never going to be triads or there's never going to be any sort of harmonic movement. It just means that it's not centered in the old-fashioned way of having one particular diatonic pitch that it dominates the whole work. But these are all interesting sharp 9 chords here. So I'm analyzing these. I don't think necessarily Schoenberg was thinking of it that way, but we can see these as sharp 9 flat 13 chords, B flat 9 over here, with these two chords going to A flat 9, C sharp 9, D flat 9, similar chords spelled, this is D flat 9. Sorry, this is not a D flat, this is D flat 9, A flat 9, E flat 9. Well, so it's a little kind of a experiment he's doing with this. Let's hear this. I mean, this sounds like half a dozen jazz guys I've heard play in the last 50, 60 years, right? This is probably 1910. And you know, I love it because this is Schoenberg. For some reason, I was under the impression too that Schoenberg is dense and it's like in your face and it's like, you know, the most densely expressive type of music. But, you know, he's got a lot of humor and a lot of lightness. Oops. All right. Why am I going in a circle? Ah. Okay, I'm not sure what that. This is Sarah. Okay, here we have a Sati, a Sarabande number 2. Many ninth chords repeat through this. This is a whole tone chord. Right.
I think you're going backwards.
Am I going backwards?
Yeah.
What the hell am I doing? This.
There you go.
All right, thank you. I pressed the wrong button. Okay, we move on. Thank you. Large chords by thirds. Right. We can add. Wrong button. We can add 11ths and 13ths. They add density to the chords, but reduce suppleness, which means they become more difficult to move around, more difficult to involve because you have so many pitches. They're cumbersome, right? Because you have so many notes. They're hard to move, they're hard to have a lot of clarity. So we can think of an 11th chord as a combination of two triads, a major or minor third apart. So here we have a C major and we have a B major. So they're major third apart here at this point.
B minor.
B minor, thank you. And here is C minor and B flat major. So this is a minor third apart here between these two pitches. We don't have our keyboardist, so we'll just, if anybody wants to step up and play these. Okay, can you turn that up? Good, thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, this worked out well, didn't it?
Yeah. Great. Well, that's, how often have we heard those chords?
Can you arpeggiate it?
Yeah, good idea.
Sure.
First one. Beautiful chords, right? Okay, 11th chords. A 13th chord can be thought of as 3 triads with tones in common at 2 points. So these are major, major, major mixtures, and this is 3 minor triads, and this is augmented major and minor triads. So the first one, right? Right. Right, augmented triad on top. Yes, right. So the 13th chord is not invertible. Anytime you invert it, it produces another 11th or 13th chord. So for instance, this is our C13, goes up to an A. If you invert it, it really, to meaning that you put the G in the bass, then it becomes like a G 13th chord. So it doesn't retain as the root sense as C. And this is an incomplete 13th, and if you invert that, it's going to sound more like a G11. So you can't invert the chords where you can, because there's just too many note members. 11ths and 13ths are often created by pedal tones, or melodic ornamentation, or triads of 7th chords. So that means adding ornamentation to existing chords. Now, his point here, in this instance, the harmonic background are really not 11th and 13th chords per se, but really ornamented smaller chords. So, like in this analysis, the apparent 11th or 13th chord is broken down to the chord with the fewest notes, and this is considered the basic chord. So for this, looking at this example, even though we have this, we have F7, we have F7 here, we have these B here and the G, they're moving notes. So they're not, to analyze this, if you wanted to, as this being the 9th and being the 11th in this moving situation is probably not really the way the composer thinks of it kind of functionally. And that the ornamented notes are the notes with the plus signs. Okay. That doesn't mean you can't write this way, it doesn't mean you can't call it what you want to call it, but it's just, it's a sense of being analyzed that way. Do we have this one?
Yes.
Oh, those sounds are gorgeous. Now, you want to have a little bit more suppleness. You want to have a little bit more ability to move the chords around. Then you can remove some of the notes. So if you omit some of these members, you get a little more freedom with harmonic movement because you're not having to involve so many notes. Now these chords, remember this? We talked about the sharp dissonances. We started talking about that in the very first class. That's the core of a lot of what we're studying. Is that you have sharp dissonances, they're restless, and more consonants as a more static sound. So if you remove some of the sharp dissonances in your 11th or your 13th chords, it becomes less restless. It becomes more stable. So in the following 13th chord, C, B, and E, F are sharp dissonances, aren't they? Right? Because they're major 7 and minor 2nd. Everybody's piece of paper shows you right there, you see? Shows you the sharp dissonances right there. So that's the most dissonant intervals that you can have. So if you omit those, then the chord becomes a little bit more, not as restless feeling. It becomes a little bit more palatable to the ear. So play this for us, if you will. The next one is without the third. Can you arpeggiate it? So we've gotten rid of the E. So the E and F natural don't appear together. Now remember, this piano sounds like crap. If you orchestrated this where you really were sustaining these chords like a brass chord or something you could really hear the dissonances, you'd have a much clearer idea of how they affect. Brass is probably, in my opinion, the best group to really have dissonance, to hear the chords, because their tones are so sustained and they blend, but strings will eat up your sound. Strings are very hard. Dissonance in strings, kind of by our nature of strings, seems to sort of get kind of eaten up. It gets taken away. And so, because strings, the warmth of the string sound. But brass, you hit a dissonant chord, and it's, particularly if the instruments are muted, you really can hear that. It's probably sharpness of that sound. Now here we get rid of the 7th, and we get rid of the B natural. Okay, so we got, right, so we're getting rid of the B that would be dissonant with the F. And here we get rid of the 11th. So we get rid of the F. So experiment around with leaving out some notes. They also, when you break down these chords, they also coincide with various scale formations, that we've looked at earlier. So if you have a chord such as this one, which is, sort of C minor, then we have G minor, and we have the D flat and A flat. This would work with the Phrygian scale. So this is a nice connection. So if, let's say, you're writing in Phrygian, then you have some of these 11th and 13th chords that lend themselves very easily to be able to be used. Now here we can see these chords become polychords and compound structures. And they also combine well with 7th and 9th chords. So all of this extended harmonies work well together. And you can stack them together. We'll look later on in the course at more polychords. Do we have this one?
39.
Yeah. Some interesting parts of this, right? Some of it sounds a little square, but I mean, you know, some of this parts are very interesting if you did a beautiful orchestration of this. You know, you can have some interesting movements we see in here. Let's hear that one more time. I kind of like that. Very much in B flat major, isn't it? Okay, let's look at some examples. Here's Ravel, 13th chords right down here at the end. I think, do we have? Okay, we're going to listen to this piece again, and we listened to it before, but just listen to it and just, we're listening at some of the ninths up in here before. But here, this is a big stack of 13th chords here. Ravel, so colorful. Scriabin.
Sounds perfect.
He uses 13th and he uses some polychords, right? Mixtures of chords together. And I spell them out here. So he's got this, these are 13th chords. A, G, B, all spelled out this way. And then moving to this next chord, E, C, G, D, G, B flat, D, F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pitches. 8 pitches in these chords. And we have two different, just looking at our motifs. This motif here of ascending altered arpeggio, we see it here, we see it here, we see it here, we see it here, we see it here. Like in one page, he's got this idea 5 times. This is what gives integrity. The thing that's so interesting to me is that even in music of chromatic nature like this, we still have the motivic development. We still have ideas that are going to be developed and varied. Same chord. Okay. Well, we can see repeats in here. So he's using the same chord several times in here. And these melodies are all being derived from this harmonic set. Very interesting. Scriabin, like I said, most people don't know his music, really. I never knew it until I started studying it this year. And he's got some beautiful, beautiful writings.